Marc Morial is president and CEO of the National Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization. As mayor of New Orleans from 1994 to 2002, Morial led New Orleans' renaissance and left office with a 70% approval rating. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in economics and African American studies, he also holds a law degree from the Georgetown University. All right, Mr. Morial, welcome back to the show, man. We haven't seen you since being on the ground in D.C. at the Congressional Black Caucus, man. So what have you been up to
It's
since
been
then?
too long. We can't go this long
I know,
without
man. It's
popping it up and connecting and having a good conversation. But hey, thank you for having me. Always
absolutely.
appreciate it and always eager to engage with the community.
Well, we appreciate it. We just talked about it a bit. We're on in some new cities. We've had a lot of growth since you've last been on. So, for folks that are just coming to the conversation, just becoming familiar with your work nationally, do us a favor, just a little bit. You know,
Yeah,
I've
so I
obviously
want
given
everyone to know I'm proud to lead the National Urban League,
right.
a 115-year-old national historic civil rights and urban advocacy
Mm-hmm.
organization. We're headquartered in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
in Harlem on 125th Street, at the Urban League Empowerment Center. But we have a network of 93 Urban League affiliates, maybe in your hometown,
Mm-hmm.
across the nation, through which we serve 300 communities in 36 states. So we are an advocate for civil rights and economic opportunity, and we are a direct program provider. After school, home buyer education, job training, small business assistance, health equity. We do that work in local communities. And I'm proud now to be serving in my second decade as president of the National Urban League, but am a bit of a recovering politician, having served in the Louisiana legislature and served 8 years as mayor of the great city of New Orleans, my beloved hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So, I bring, I think, to this conversation years of involvement, years of experience, but also a real sense of where we are vis-a-vis the future.
Fantastic. I love it. So obviously this time of year, we're taking inventory of
Mhm.
where we are, where we've been, where we're going. So, being in your position and at the helm of one of the great civil rights organizations in this country, what would you say is maybe one of the biggest lessons that we've learned in 2025 that will fortify us moving forward?
We better understand that who wins the elections matters.
Mm,
And making excuses about not voting is committing suicide.
yeah.
Refusing to vote, making excuses about voting is suicide. Because this country respects political power and economic power, open and shut.
Yeah.
And we need to always think about how to maximize our political power. And that is not to necessarily I don't vote because I'm in love with anybody. That's not my condition.
Sure.
I vote because my agenda aligns with them mostly. May not align completely, and the agenda I align with mostly may be in opposition to an agenda that doesn't align with me at all or very little.
Sure.
We got to be intelligent voters. We need to understand that all of what we see, the Doge cuts, the layoffs of Black women, the attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the militarization of American cities stems from the outcome of the election.
Yeah.
And so we gotta centralize that lesson. It was good that in the fall of 24, we had high turnout in Virginia, high turnout in New Jersey, and the highest turnout in a mayor's race in New York City since 1969.
Mm,
Those are good signs. If we can sustain and increase that across the nation. So I'm the first one to say, hey, voting is not an elixir, not a panacea, not a magic wand, not a super powerful pill, but it is a lever of power that we have, and it has to be individuals aligned together collectively to make impact. So I say we should learn that. We should also learn that in 2025, I've been very clear from the very beginning that the National Urban League and other civil rights organizations, we will continue to stand against policies that hurt America while always demonstrating a willingness to work with anyone that wants to benefit our community. And so I've been somewhat, not only have we seen the federal administration take steps that are damaging, we've also seen many, many corporations that rely heavily on African-American consumers step off, step away, step to the side when it comes to a commitment of fairness and a commitment of equal opportunity. That's what DE&I is. Yeah. It's a synonym. DE&I is fairness and equal opportunity. Let's understand what it is. And they've sought to smash and smear the term in an effort to make people fearful that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a preference program for Black people and women. It is not. It is not. And we've got to continue to stand up for a balanced, fair playing field when it comes to jobs, contracts, home ownership, and opportunity. This is where we are in America today. It's been a state of emergency, but our community is strong. We're resilient. We have resources. I was just in Biloxi, Mississippi with hundreds of African-American legislators, and I found the energy and the commitment strong. We got to build it. We got to sustain it. We have to push back, and we have to offer an alternative vision.
I love that. Well, just to make that live a little bit more, it's funny because Q and I were having a conversation recently where we talked about Dr. Umar Johnson saying something effectually what he communicated. This would have been back in 2024 was that Black people should not vote for the Democrat Kamala Harris until we get something, which in Q's estimation was sort of putting the cart before the horse. And I think that your words, in terms of the reflection on the lessons that we learned in 2025, really help make that stand out, because the truth is that there were a lot of people who were dissenting.
I understand that sentiment, but it's political suicide.
Right.
Withhold your vote. What did that get us?
Exactly what he was saying. Yeah.
Come on, man. That's like saying, I'm not going to breathe the air until it's clean. When they promise me the air's clean, then I'll breathe it. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
I, respect the sentiment, but I'm not going to participate in political suicide.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that that's a lesson that we've learned, because that means that, it wasn't a total loss. But in that same vein, I want to ask, and I think I got an idea of what your answer might be, but what do you think that we should collectively be looking forward to in 2026?
So for 2026, I think it's a year when we have to sharpen what our agenda for America is. And for the National Urban League, it revolves around what we call the D3 imperative.
Okay.
Defend democracy, which is a defense and a promotion of voting rights and civic participation and all of the principles of democracy. Not because democracy is perfect, but because it's better than autocracy.
Sure. Yeah.
Better than a monarchy. Number two, we have to demand diversity. By demanding diversity, we're demanding equal participation in the economics of this country. We've never had it, but we got to continue to fight for it. And the third is defeat poverty. Why does the richest nation on earth, 30 trillion in GDP, still tolerate Americans that can't pay their bills? Don't we have the wherewithal? Don't we have the smarts? And what we've done is we've created a gilded class of billionaires, about 1 million of them, right? No, about 1,000 of them. And too many Americans, even those that thought of themselves as being middle class or working class, are being left behind. They work on jobs. They work 2 jobs. Rent's too high. Mortgage is too high. Taking care of parents. So many people are taking care of parents, right? They may be taking care of parents and children simultaneously. So economically, there were more middle-class Americans in 1970 than there are today. So things are relative. In 1970, you could be middle class. You didn't have 3 devices.
Yeah.
You live by the standard of the times. And so I think it's unacceptable. I mean, Congress just passed one big ugly bill. It gave massive benefits to wealthy people. And now when you score it fiscally, the person making $50,000 a year is going to be paid $700 more in taxes a year. The billionaire got a cut. The multimillionaire got a cut. Major companies got cuts. Why do politicians even embrace policies that put pain on working, middle, and poor Americans?
Well, the point that you made about our economic vitality in the 70s is something that I was studying recently, because between the 50s and the 70s, that was the only time in history, it was in this country too, the only time in history where a person could work a normal job and become rich based on simply their labor alone. And it wasn't that way before, it hasn't been that way since. And it is philosophies like trickle down economics from the Reagan administration. And then we see that again in the big ugly bill, where these tax benefits go to the wealthiest faction of the country with the expectation that they're going to create jobs or drive innovation. And seldom does that innovation or work, jobs, et cetera, trickle down to, the working class in a way that's meaningful. And this is why we see us lagging behind the wealthiest group of individuals in this country, who are concentrating and hoarding the wealth. I think it's 40% of all the wealth generated in last year of this country went to just the handful of billionaires. And the rest of us are left to deal with the rest of the economy, which is
really
crazy when you think about it.
Less than 1,000 billionaires in America.
There you go. Yep.
Okay, this is a very small group of people. It wouldn't fill Madison Square Garden. It wouldn't fill an average high school in America.
Right.
I think it's 813, 14, 15 billionaires. Look, I'm not bashing a billionaire, but I am bashing systems, programs, and policies which allow such an enormous creation of wealth without a progressive tax code that compels them to put back into the country that help make them rich and great.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't get there by yourself. You don't become rich on your own. The taxpayers have built a first-class interstate highway system so e-commerce trucks can traverse, right? The taxpayers have supported the building of a healthcare system, imperfect as it will, which has allowed people to live much longer lives. The taxpayers fund a civil aviation system, in part, that creates an opportunity for people to fly on commercial jets and private planes to get from city to city in less than a few hours. The taxpayers have funded a public education system, albeit not perfect, and in many respects, investments in college education that help produce a highly talented class of people. We got to understand that the taxpayers' investments enable the creation of wealth in America. And discontinue this rhetoric that every public school is a failure, that the healthcare system is an abject failure. It doesn't work for people who don't have any money.
That's fair.
And many, many schools in suburban and rural America work very well and produce a lot of presidential scholars.
Sure. Yeah.
May not work well in urban communities, in under-resourced communities, but we got to understand, you don't get to that enormity of wealth without help from others. Look, Musk, people talk about Musk. Musk is a government contractor. He has been chosen to commercialize technologies that were created with government research. See, what we don't have going on in the public square enough today is truth-telling, fact-telling. I'm saying this not to bash Musk, but to take some of these guys off their thrones. Some of these guys on it, I'm so brilliant. I'm the smartest guy in the world. Man, anybody that says that, I question their judgment.
And rightfully so. I feel like this is a good sort of segue into asking your thoughts about the election of Mamdani in New York and really democratic socialism in general, because it's kind of at a point where people are investigating and I would imagine seeing.
Well, I think that the concept of democratic socialism, to be honest, I'm not clear what it always means in terms of policy beyond a brand, right? But let me say this. Zoran Mamdani ran a brilliant campaign.
Okay.
And let me tell you why he ran a brilliant campaign. He did something that Barack Obama did on the left, center left, what Donald Trump did on the center right, and what all of my campaigns for mayor were predicated on. And that is to expand the electorate, to go after people who historically don't vote. And in Mamdani's case, he did that in the primary and got a voter pool where 30% of the voters were first-time voters. So what he did was able to enthuse and stimulate a set of voters that historically have not voted. Now, to his credit, Mr. Trump did that on the right. He got rural voters, he got rural conservative-leaning voters to turn out in higher numbers in 2016, 2020, and 2024. So Mamdani, I think what I say about him is there's great hope, a lot of enthusiasm in many, many places, some concerns and fears in other places. Let me tell you how mayors are judged. Mayors are judged by results. Mayors are not judged by ideas. Legislators sometimes are judged by ideas. Executives are judged by results. So for Mamdani, the question is, a year from now, 24 months from now, how will the city of New York be performing on his watch? But I think he surprised some people. I've had an opportunity to have several conversations with him, and I find him to be quite thoughtful. I find him to be, I think, committed to his philosophy, but I think he's got a pragmatic side to him. And I think that's important for a mayor, right? A mayor has to have a pragmatic side because you're going to be judged on whether you can get things done, not because you can flow big ideas, but whether you can take those ideas and shape them and execute them.
I love that. I've been kind of peeking behind the curtain there, just following those campaigns as they were coming together, and I know that that you're absolutely right. That not only was it true of Mamdani, but you're right about Donald Trump as well, and Barack Obama taking these non-traditional avenues to get to voters that feel like they've been disenfranchised, whether they be first-time voters or historically Democratic or Republican voters, and they feel left behind by their party. And so all three of these names have been able to galvanize these different groups. And so my hope is, because we covered a story where there are 7 Black women running for Senate seats in 2026. And so my hope is that these things are well learned by politicians that we want to see, shape the future, especially after having what many of us consider to be a political, more than a political setback, with the re-election of Donald Trump, those of us that espouse a more progressive agenda. Now, speaking of Trump, I want to ask your opinion on the impact of tariffs on the country at large and on Black businesses specifically, because
the tariff is a sales tax.
Okay. Yeah.
They call it a tax. It's a form of a tax because it is a tax on goods that come into the country. It's taxed at the point of entry into the country, not a tax like most sales taxes that are imposed at the point of an end user, a final sale.
Right.
It's a bit of what in Europe they used to call a VAT, a value added tax. In any respects, it has had an impact because for Black consumers, it will make items that they purchase more expensive because the importer either has to eat the cost of the tariff and it eats into their profits, or pass it on to the end user who's the consumer. So it's going to affect Black consumers. It's going to affect all consumers. Second way it affects Black businesses is if you're a Black business that imports things from anywhere in the world. You could be importing and a tariff's been imposed on those countries. It's going to be more expensive for you to bring those things in and resell them in the United States. Or if you're a business that relies on component parts, pieces, suppose you sell belts, but you make the belts here, but you get the buckles someplace else, right? Then it's going to make your product more expensive. And I think the tariffs were not well thought out by the Trump economic team because they put, on one hand, they put tariffs on foreign automobiles. On the other hand, they put tariffs on components like aluminum and steel that domestic auto manufacturers have to buy to make cars here in the United States. Therefore, impacting the domestic automobile manufacturer that you thought you were helping. It's
about
not,
this?
Look, this tariff regime that the administration is in, I call it shoot, ready, aim.
Yeah.
Where I've always been a believer of a tariff as a tool to level the playing field in the arena of trade. But when you run out and you just shotgun tariff all these countries with the thought that you could leverage them into deals, we see that's not worked. And what the administration has been quietly doing over the last 60 days is eliminating or reducing many of these tariffs because they know now that in many respects, this is a failed economic policy.
Okay. Well, how about this? When Donald Trump says tariffs are bringing in tons of revenue and Americans are going to get money from it, and, you know, that sort of thing that he does, how do you respond
It's
to that?
transactional. One check. One check is not long-term economic growth. Okay? You're basically trying to, bribe the public. They just gave the farmers $12 billion. Okay, what happens when that money's gone? Are we going to keep subsidizing the farmers because of the impact on the tariffs? Or is it one time? These are not sustainable policies. This is run, shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is not a sustainable policy. We gave, the government gave our checks in a pandemic because we were in an health emergency. And people were required to stay at home to keep COVID from being even more contagious and killing even more people. So yeah, would everybody like a check? Okay, fine, you get a check. What about next year? What about the year after?
Yeah.
Because the only reason you're giving a check is because your policies are failing. And I thought you were going to take the COVID money and pay down the deficit. I mean, not the COVID money, the tariff money, pay down the deficit. Now you're saying, oh no, I'm going to give it back to the American people.
So,
I mean, these policies, they just smack of, a little bit of what I call a pickup game of basketball.
okay.
You kind of make it up as you go along. Sandlot football. Huddle, go out, go to the tree, take a left. All right. Oops, you didn't catch the ball. Next time you go to the garbage can and take a right. I mean, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, you're right.
Basketball, sandlot football. Just come on, huddle, and draw the play in the sand.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's good, but you can't run a whole season drawing every play in the sand.
Sure.
And expect to be a championship team.
Yeah.
And so I think the policies have been instinctive, not coherent. That's why tariffs are on, no tariffs are off. Negotiations are on, no negotiations are off. We're going to have a deal in a week and none comes.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard for most of 2025.
Yeah. Well, Again, I think your point is well made. When you talked about the stimulus checks during COVID, there might have been maybe two of those. And I do remember Donald Trump fighting to get his name printed on those
And
checks.
Biden didn't put his name on it, and it hurt Biden
Right.
because everyone remembered the Trump check, not the
Exactly.
Biden check.
Exactly. And where I was going with that is, Q and I, we talked about this recently too. Q mentioned that the president is trying to send $1,776 to, military personnel, but that money was also already approved as like a housing voucher, something like that. Q knows a little bit more about it than I do, but Trump is simply rebranding that and then connecting it with tariff revenue. And that way the American people look at him like, oh, he's doing this great deed. But I think that the economics that you laid out speak volumes to the practicality of it in the first place. It's a one-time payment. It is not a sustainable, life-altering adjustment to our economic philosophy. And so, well said. I appreciate you kind of clarifying that, for our listeners and people that don't follow those things as closely. I do want to get your thoughts before we part about DEI, because this is a fight that has been long fought by you. In fact, Q and I, we take notes from you. There's a little bit of a positive story out there saying that there's a study that has found that DEI is not dead, according to both Republicans and Democrats that were surveyed. And, I just wanted to get your thoughts.
So let's take a step back. And what is diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. Let's do that.
Its root is the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right. Exactly.
And discrimination in employment based on race, creed, color, religion, sex/gender, national origin. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, like affirmative action, were a set of steps, policies undertaken in the public and private sector to implement the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the terminology diversity, equity, and inclusion is a term of art. What the right has sought to do is the same thing the right tried to do in the 70s. And that is to suggest that when you commit to equal opportunity, you are committing to a preference program in favor of those that have historically been locked out, left out. Let me say this clearly and unambiguously. It's a damn lie. It's a misrepresentation. It's a fabrication, and it's a smear campaign. With diversity, when you see diversity, equity, and inclusion, its synonym is equal opportunity and fairness. And all of this is about is leveling the playing field so that everyone that has merit has a chance to apply, to be interviewed, and to get the job and get the promotion, or to get the business opportunity, or to get the loan. The effort to mischaracterize diversity, equity, and inclusion has backfired on its attackers. Case in point, recent public opinion poll that my team can get for you demonstrates that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DE&I, have a 70% approval rating amongst the American people.
Wow.
And that the more vigorous the attacks are, the stronger the supports become. So I want to make sure you have that poll.
Yes, please.
Because it underscores that loud noise and smoke should not distract us. That loud noise and smoke does not reflect the sentiment of the American people.
Yeah.
And now, while there have been many businesses that have pivoted away, there are also those that have remained committed. And there are also those that have tweaked but remain committed. A year later, the campaign of intimidation is a campaign by the government, by the administration, intimidate universities, intimidate businesses, intimidate nonprofit institutions when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's about fairness. It's about equal opportunity. That's the synonym. When people hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, they ought to understand that what it is about is the basic principles that this country was founded on. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that no one should be treated differently under the law. And historically, we did. And people had no chance. And when you start creating a chance, creating an opportunity, somehow that's wrong and that's bad. Those that promote this are playing mind games, twisting logic, twisting the truth, and twisting words. No one wants, this is not about a preference for anyone.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of why discrimination is stark and real. There's a case out there of an African-American woman. Let's call her Cynthia James. And Cynthia James is a black woman who had a LinkedIn page with all of her credentials on a LinkedIn page. Cynthia decided to change her name to Emily James.
I saw this, yeah.
And become a white person with the same resume. She gets 30 times.
I saw that.
Okay, if that's not an indication of what...
Yeah. That's a real story, yeah.
In America, this is so real. People visually see, and they respond, notwithstanding the exact same credentials.
Right. Well, yeah, that we covered that on the show. That's actually not the only version of it, but the LinkedIn one certainly did make a lot of headlines. So I appreciate you bringing that up to make that point, because a lot of people were indeed susceptible to the notion that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts could harm white men, which is not what it was intended to do, nor did that actually result in any meaningful harm to white males.
Be honest. If white men have had 95% of 100 manager jobs at company A, and 5 years later, white men have 80 of the jobs, white women have 10 of them, and black and Latinos have 10 of them, has that white man been discriminated against?
And that's the point. Your point is well made. Exactly. So I appreciate
that. And sometimes people think a less qualified. They see this is where stereotypes work very, very powerfully in American life. And for many white men, there's a presumption of competence, a presumption of qualifications. For many black people, there's a presumption of incompetence. Presumption. You got to prove to me that you can do this job. I'm not even going to give you the benefit of the doubt or a shadow of doubt. Now, I'm not going to say that's why. I don't call this out in every employer or in every corporation. I want people to understand. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if it happens in one or two employers, that's one or two too many.
Yeah.
If we're going to get to a meritocracy, then a true meritocracy is going to look like America.
Yes.
Because there's merit in the white community, there's merit among blacks, men, women. Every community's got merit, talent. And I meet, I tell people I meet so many talented people from all backgrounds. And I meet people who I don't think are talented. Some are white, some are black. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some are women.
Well, before we let you go, there's a lot of people that we interact with. They call up, they send us messages, all that sort of stuff, and they understandably have a very bleak outlook of in terms of what the future holds. The Supreme Court is one of the things that keeps people from becoming more optimistic or from looking toward the future. Obviously, the current administration's heavy-handed approach to, education, to, the economics, to, civil rights, et cetera. There's a lot of things that people are dealing with. So before we let you go, what's one piece of advice you would give to our listeners to keep them, fortified and in the fight to, make the world, better for
Without
all of
hope,
us, not
we
some
have
of us.
nothing. And what fortifies me is history.
Okay.
Our ancestors, fathers, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, led a freedom movement. They had no votes. They were locked out of mainstream America, but they led a fight to create an environment where a Civil Rights Act, a Voting Rights Act, and a fair housing law, and a war on poverty became the law of the land. And imagine the difficulty of those times. We cannot give up. We cannot give in. And we have to be inspired by those that lived before us.
Sure.
And that's the best. I mean, it's the only thing that's tangible and real. And understand life ain't no crystal stair. Life ain't no party. These are difficult times. These are tough times. But we've got to work and we've got to fight. And that time was also associated with what you talked about earlier, and that is where in the 50s and 60s and 70s, people's economic standing, no matter what class they were in, rose in America. And I also think that when people are active and involved in the work, involved in politics, involved in community affairs, involved in professional association, you're going to have a lot more affirmation because you're part of the work to change things. So my appeal to people is not to be a spectator, not to be in the grandstand, not to just be an observer and a watcher. Get yourself involved.
Yeah, I like that. Well,
appreciate you.
You're an inspiration as
Thank
always. I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm hoping on the ground again at the national conference, National Urban League.
Yeah, now you all need to mark the 22nd of January at the National Press Club. The Demand Diversity Round, 22nd at the National Press Club. The Demand Diversity Roundtable is going to have its second meeting. And so front and center will be all of the issues we've discussed today.
Okay. All right. Well, then we will be on the ground in attendance. When you send over the study, make sure to include that, and we're there. It's not a problem at all. Mr. President, Marc Morial, the President and CEO of the National Urban League, thank you for your time.
Thank you. God bless and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy Kwanzaa.